You're listening to the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast hosted by Patrick Weichel. Our goal is to help you grow your ministry through simple strategies and scalable systems. With over a decade of ministry experience, we know that these strategies and systems will bring value to you as a leader and to your entire team.
Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast. I'm joined today, honestly, by a great friend, one of my best friends in the entire world. He is the college pastor of C3 at Cross Church at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, and excited to have you on today, man, to share a little bit about leaders. So let us know a little bit who Luke Harper is, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and we'll talk about leaders today.
Yeah, man. What's up, everybody listening? My name's Luke, and I get the privilege of being the college pastor at Cross Church. I'm one of Pat's best friends. I'm glad that I know that now, that I'm in the upper tier of friendship with Pat.
Oh, dude. You are the upper tier. You're the top of the upper tier.
Yeah.
You start podcasting, and everyone has to be some of the best friends, you know?
That's right. Yeah. I'm just glad I got an invite, man. But yeah, no, I've been doing college ministry here I just finished literally last night, my fourth full year of college ministry. My wife and I, Kelsey, have been here at Cross Church since 2016. Got two little girls, Rory Kate, who's just a little over a year old, and Layla, who is going to be 5 in June. And so just a part of a sorority house out here trying to figure out life. But
you are.
It's great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Come on. So tell us a little bit about C3. I know a lot about C3. I mean, it's one of the premier college ministries in the country, and that's going to make you cringe because you hate being celebrated and stuff like that. But it really is. Maybe you won't get to this, but you run some big events, but you also run a big ministry, and you have nights of 1,000. What's it like being in college ministry, running that big of an organization?
Yeah, man, honestly, C3 is the product of a couple of things. I mean, one, the Lord has just, for whatever reason, brought just some amazing college students who really love the Lord to our church. And not only that, has brought some amazing staff to C3 that I get to work with every day, which makes it a real blessing and joy. But yeah, man, I mean, this is something C3's, we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of people: David McKinney, Noah Garcia, Dave Kinney, Brian Mills, Zach Morris, a lot of people who've just faithfully labored in C3 before us. But it's over a decade. The Lord's just kind of allowed us to reach that campus in a unique way. And so we do weekly services on Wednesday nights that we just finished up. We average about 800 on Wednesday nights. Have a dream team of college students who serve our church. That's somewhere between 250 to 300 every year of college students just serving our church. But it really is just the hand of the Lord on what God's doing at Cross Church, and a lot of men who've prayed that the Lord would use our Fayetteville campus to reach college students. And I think we're walking in the answered prayers of a lot of men who've gone before us and women who've gone before us and asked the Lord to do things. But it's crazy. It's fun. We're in a really cool season right now, and I'm pumped that I get to be in this seat for sure.
Yeah, no, dude, that's awesome. I remember when you stepped out of student ministry and you stepped into C3 and just talking about the dreams and the vision and everything that it already was. It's not like you took over like a dying or an unhealthy ministry. Like, it was already big, and it's grown even more since you've taken over. But one of the things, like, early on, I remember you identified as like, man, we need more leaders. Not that the leaders that we have are bad, or, maybe even not that we don't have enough. It was just immediately like, we need more. And I definitely want to talk at some point how, you said you have 250 to 300 college students serving, and that's not just in the ministry. It's actually transferred to Sunday morning as well. But talk about that a little bit. I mean, you come into a ministry, you take it over, you immediately feel this burden for more leaders. Where did you start? What system or what burden, what vision did you start with of just like, okay, here's how we're going to recruit these leaders? Because when you took over, I guess it would be safe to say you more than doubled the leaders. So how did that happen?
Well, I mean, I would say that one of the things that helped us was our entire ministry shut down in 2020. that was really the springboard to us recruiting a ton more leaders in a season where we were running a service every single Wednesday night. We had to move to
Mm-hmm.
doing 10 different venues in homes and like barns and backyards around our city to kind of just navigate COVID. And so what that started on our team with me and Brendan Washington and Callie Causey at the time was just, we just started calling college students over the summer of 2020 and just asking them, hey, this is what we're doing to make it through COVID and we need you to be a part. And I think what we've learned in the meantime, in the last 3 years since then, is that when you call students, when we called our students to a vision, they responded because they want to play a part in the local church and they want to play a part in being ministers of the gospel. And so then when we started to give some amazing college students opportunities to serve, then they started serving other people, and the college students need to come into our ministry, started to look at the people above them and say, if that's what a junior in college can be, then I want to pursue what it takes to be that. And so then the Lord just started a snowball of servant-based leadership, but just serving and living by example, began this snowball of recruiting new leaders and dream teamers every year that has kind of led to where we're at now.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is it is that, like, I feel like maybe it gets said a lot, but maybe it doesn't get said enough because it's still like an aha moment to some people. But like, leaders respond to vision, not need. Like, nobody wants to join a sinking ship. So if you're like begging, like, oh, we just have to have this, we have to have this, it's like, that kind of sounds like a train wreck. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. And so, like, it sounds like you just simply got on the phone with people and casted a contagious vision and said, hey, don't come do something for us, come be a part of something for us. And that seemed to turn the tide for y'all.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's for sure what we did. I mean, our students were amazing in that season, but I think one of the big things was, like we said, hey, we're taking C3 to our city. Like we kind of created this whole idea like public, and we use the terminology of like when companies go public, we invite other people into funding future growth. And we kind of casted this vision of like, this is our opportunity as the college students of Cross Church to invest in the future growth of this ministry through a difficult season. And as these semesters have just kind of layered on top of each other, we've just kind of kept that same DNA of like, what could the Lord use us collectively to do? And our students on Sunday night, one of the things that I told them in our last leadership meeting of the semester, we were just meeting, we had a dinner with our leaders talking about all the things ahead for C3 and some of the bigger things we're going to ask them to lead. And I just kind of told them this simple phrase that came to mind over and over again was, hey, we don't need to push people to work when they're pulled by a vision. We don't need to push people to work when they're pulled by a vision. And so my ask to them was cast the vision, like be bold, keep the why of the teams that they lead, whether it's parking teams or whether it's greeter teams or whatever it may be. If the vision is out in front of us as a family on mission together going forward to build the church and build the kingdom, then that's going to be what we're pulled by. Instead of forcing people to do goals, we're just keeping the vision clear and constantly identifying what the roles that we're playing, how those are playing a part in seeing the vision come to life. And I think people are pulled by that. And there's no need to force or push when people are pulled by a vision for their life.
Yeah, and then you said something too, like it creates that upward draft, like it's attractional, like a sophomore or freshman would be like, well, if that's what a junior and senior's doing, if this is the difference I see them making, on this family on mission together, which I know is y'all's thing, then I want to be a part of that. And so I'm interested, like, how much recruiting right now are you actually having to knock down doors and do shoulder tapping? And how much has your like system of casting vision just created like almost a little subsystem under that where you just have people like being like, how do I be a part?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say, there's definitely still some, every semester, every month we're shoulder tapping different students and saying, hey, I see this like in you, and trying to call students out to play a role in building the church and leveraging their life for eternal things. Right. But I do think that one of the major things we do is we believe wholeheartedly at C3 that if you plug into community and you serve and build up the church and you leverage your life for building up the church in the kingdom for 4 years, that you are going to be a better man of God or woman of God when you graduate. And so we preach as a team, even on our staff meetings, is we say like, hey, if we don't believe that the teams that we're creating and the ways that the structures we're putting in place to lead these people, if we don't believe that a college student signing up to be on the parking team is actually going to impact his walk with Jesus, then somehow we're leading the parking team in the wrong direction. And so because we stay committed to that belief, we're constantly saying, okay, we need to put leaders of these teams who are shepherds and people who want to care for the people that serve with them. And so we're trying to create a team dynamic on every team where you're not just serving on the parking team, you're entering into a discipleship and Christian community-based relationship by serving. And so we're creating this family aspect of like, not only am I leveraging my life to be a part of what the church is doing and what God is doing here in Northwest Arkansas, but I'm also gaining brothers and sisters in Christ that are for me. And so then what I think is happening with the Lord's just blessing is we have team leaders who have been a part of that process. They've been discipled. They've been in relationships and served alongside people and been given an example of leadership. And so it's a natural funnel where they're just constantly stepping into those next things because they see the impact that it made in them. And they're saying, I crave wanting to do that for somebody else.
And that's your people are even recruiting for you because, like they've had this experience. I want other people to have this experience. I'm inviting them in. So he's like, it's not all just some system. It's actually people who are doing it for you because of the way that you've created a system to create such strong, contagious culture of making a difference, being discipled, having community, having an environment that's really going to make you better all around and not just give you a task to do something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what we try to do with our team nights, with our leadership meetings, any of those things. We're just trying to pour gas on the fire of like being a family, walking with Jesus together, constantly preaching, like if your walk with the Lord's not right, then like don't sacrifice your walk with the Lord on the altar of your service position within C3. Trying to just help them to understand like we're trying to, as a family, go on mission together to what God's called us to do. And so I think that creates a contagious, like, this is what I do as a Christian, as a part of Cross, college student. I'm a part of this movement of people that's rallied together to labor with one another and to bear one another's burdens, but also to hold some doors on Wednesday nights and help people feel welcome. And prayerfully, the Lord continues to expand that with new teams and new things moving into the future.
Yeah, that's big. So I hear two things I want you to elaborate more on, but you said something that not every listener is going to be familiar with. You say shoulder tapping and I see in you conversations. And so here's kind of how I want to set this idea up. I think the tension for a lot of people is they might be like, well, that's great, dude, but you have the mic, you have the stage, you have the platform, and I don't have that on a Sunday morning, or I don't have that for my ministry. And I know you specifically are really good at recruiting from the stage. You do that really well of, hey, you're using your sermons to drive a point. But I think having watched you in action and even worked for you and having you teach me how to do the same thing for big events is you shoulder tap and you recruit and work a lobby like no one I've ever seen. So one of the things we say all the time is the best place to start recruiting and to find more people is in your church's lobby. So could you talk about that for a second? Explain what shoulder tapping is, talk about the I see in you conversation, and then just talk a little bit about your system and even your staff system and what you've given them for working a lobby for finding new leaders.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, so we do, that's my role. I mean, you said it, my role in C3 is the big stage vision push. I do that a lot. And so that gets us a major kind of crop of leaders that are at least interested. And obviously college students, the environment is I want to get connected. So many of them are already wanting something. And so they're signing up to serve and those types of things. But I think when it comes to higher levels of leadership and just inviting people into those things, I think one of the big things is we're a part of the things that are already existing within our college ministry. So if it's one of our small group, our public houses is what we call our small groups. So there's 6 different leaders there. Well, we're at those houses. I mean, staff members are going to those Tuesday night Bible studies or those Monday night things, and we're beginning to see, okay, this person is very vocal in small group conversations. This person is very like a rallier of people. And so I can even think of like an instance of just like a couple of weeks ago. There was a girl that's in leadership at one of our houses, and she literally stood at the edge of a house, like on the outside of the house, and screamed and welcomed every name of a person that walked into the community group. Like 55 people. She knew every name, and she shouted it to welcome them to the house. And so our teams come alongside her and said, hey, we want you to be the greeter team lead and lead about 40 greeters next year. We're pulling her environment. But one of the things we've seen in her is no doubt, like she's the best greeter we have in C3. And so why not place her in a place where she can create that contagious culture of greeting in a way that makes everybody feel like it's not their first time, like they're coming to a family reunion. And that's what she does. I think it's just like when you're amongst people and you're actively shepherding people, you're seeing their gifts on display. And I think that's where the things like that I've learned kind of in this season is when we're just asking people to fill spots, we recruit our own problems. Right. And so we end up getting leaders that can't effectively lead small groups, or leaders who have a different vision for a team that we're asking them to lead just because we need a spot filled. And I think that's one of the things that our staff team has been diligent to do. And I've been blessed just by watching them. They actively know like these people, and they see their strengths and they see their spiritual gifts on display just in a church setting. And then we can say, hey, part of the future of C3, or hey, part of the future of where we're heading, we need somebody that's like this. And I've seen you display this, this, and this that is going to make this work. And then we just pour like vision and belief in them. And sometimes those are scary conversations. Like those college students are like, they're just huge, bug-eyed. Like, I don't know.
No way I can do this.
But that's our job. And that's what I tell them. Like, that's what our staff communicates. It's like, hey, it's not your job to know how to do that. It's our job to train you how to do that. You already have everything you need to be successful, though, because we've seen this in you. And so we're just placing you. It's our job to equip you for the role we're giving you within our ministry. It's your job to walk by the Spirit and let your gifts make you successful in building up the church and your brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I think that's, would be my answer to that question. I think it's just knowing our people well enough to know their gifts and know where they will succeed. And then training and leading them so that those gifts can best be showcased in the role that we're giving them. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and that happens in the lobby. It happens in relationship. It happens in your small group. Like, so I think if you're listening, like, hey, if you're in a small group, which you should be because you're asking your students or your people to be in one. So, shame on you a little bit if you're not. But like, if your small group isn't serving in your ministry, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your influence a little bit. Like when you talk about your life in group, you need to be casting some vision. And if you can't get a small group that you do life with, fired up about your ministry, then you might have a bigger issue going on in your life. But yeah, it's like you don't have to go to all these new places. I'm surprised by how many guys are just like, I'm looking for new places to find leaders. And I was like, well, why don't you need to stop looking for new places, and you need to just start looking at the places you're already in, and look up around you and know people enough. I mean, it's hard to recruit off a spreadsheet when you don't know their giftedness, and then you are recruiting problems and things like that. So, man, that's really good. Talk a little bit about, okay, so you've done that shoulder tap. Hey, I see this in you. I see this giftedness on display. Don't worry. You don't have to have all the proficiencies. We're going to make you proficient. You just need to be able and willing. What happens after that in y'all's system? You're shoulder tapping all the time in a lobby, through a sermon. You're setting it up. I know your team runs like crazy and has coffee meetings and all these things. But once somebody's shoulder tapped and you have an I see in you conversation, how do you get them recruited into your ministry?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically that's probably a multi-conversation type of situation. But ultimately we'll push them to an interview process where our team will sit down on a couch and just talk with them in our lobby about things we require of leaders, just kind of the nuts and bolts of things like church membership, those types of things that we have here at Cross Church that are necessary for us to serve, but also just asking them to, we always say, grow, find family, and commit. Those are the three things we want them to do. One, they got to be a champion of their own spiritual growth. Two, they got to be within the people. If you're going to be asked to shepherd people, these got to be your people. And then three, committed to play your leadership role out. It means you just can't be an everyday college student. If we're going to put you in a position of leadership, then you got to do it. And so we have that serious conversation. And then what we begin to do is we begin to place them under leadership that we want them to replicate. And so if it's a small group leader and a house coach that we have, we're placing them. We've called them higher to that level, but we also have a leader above them that is exemplifying what we believe their next step will be. And so for in our system, and we have house coaches, and then we have 4 different 2 guys, 2 girl leaders that are in those houses. And the heart behind that is we see that, call them out, place them in that. They're also not left alone, but they're also given an example of someone to follow. And that person ultimately exemplifies what we want to see in them a year from now. And so they're not left on an island really ever. Every team leader has a co-lead, and there's coordinators and all these different things that I could talk through. But there's a lot of different levels of relationship. And so as we get them started, we're asking them to build community with the people that they lead, be heavily relational. And then we're just giving calendars and resourcing as much information as we can so that they don't feel like they don't know what's going to happen. And then we're just kind of walking with them through the process and building them towards whatever that next thing is that we need them to do or lead for us, so that they're not surprised. We've prepared them, and they've built a relational equity with the people that they lead, that whatever we lead them towards, their people are going to be right there following, because they've already taken their team to Canes 4 times before they've even been asked to do anything that might challenge their team in any way. So that's kind of the process that we do, and how we kind of invite people in to jump in and start serving, is kind of starting relationally, giving them all the information they need, and then walking with them as they have to take those leadership steps and jumps.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, man, I know we have a ton of student pastors who are listeners to the podcast and just consume the content, and makes sense. It's the DNA. It's the cloth we're cut from. You were student pastor. I work for you actually as your associate student pastor. So I'm interested. You've had incredible success everywhere you've been. You've had extreme success recruiting leaders in C3. I mean, 250 to 300 leaders is bigger than probably most people's ministries listening to this. So what would you say to someone who's struggling to find leaders? And what would you say to somebody who's struggling to recruit leaders? How would you encourage them? Where would you tell them to start? What's maybe like a simple plan? For us, we like simple strategies that lead to scalable growth. And what that means for us is something that doesn't take more time, cost more money, or require more staff. So what would you say to somebody who's like, man, I need more leaders. I just don't know where to get them or how to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been there. I think one of the resources that I have now that I didn't have as a student pastor as much is that we just have a ton of college students who are interested in being a part of the church. And so I definitely don't think it's easy. I think I'm crazy blessed in the spot that I'm in right now to get to lead leaders the way that I get to do it right now. But I would just say, spend time with your people and start where you are. I know that sounds like an oversimplified answer, but the image in my head is like, who's the dad that every kid after a football practice is wanting to talk to and chat with after that sports team gets done practicing? Who is that guy? And is he a part of your church? And if he's not, then is there a possibility that he could be? Is there a coach? Is there just, persons of peace, gatekeepers within your community that heavily influence youth in a specific direction? And whoever those people are, the Lord's already gifted them a calling, burden, influential abilities. And I would even say, people aren't going to want to serve in a role that doesn't fit their gifts. So part of, I think, one of the things that the easiest thing to do is finding those people and then seeing, man, how can this guy be a part of furthering the future of the youth ministry that I lead? Maybe that's just, hey, what if we started taking all these guys to McDonald's after football practice and doing a Bible study? And I just need you to help me. Just help me rally the troops. And then cast in vision after every single meeting, like going to the parking lot saying, man, hey, there was 8 middle school football players today. You were a part of that. And just helping that person see what God is doing through them. And when they start to see that, you're not having to push them to work, right? They're being pulled by the vision that the Lord is allowing them to experience through their life. And I think that's part of what our job is as student pastors, college pastors, is to equip the saints to the work of ministry. And so who are those people that are, who are those people within your church that are gatekeepers in your community or influential with the next generation that have a heart for that? Even if it's, I remember when I was a student pastor in Knoxville, there was an old, his name was Gene. He was in his 80s, and he would come every Wednesday night into our youth building, and he would play pool with 3 middle school boys, and he would teach them how to be good at pool. And Gene probably wasn't going to be a guy picking up kids from football practices. He probably wasn't going to be the best small group leader, but man, his role was being a community and a man of God in a couple of guys' lives who just want to play pool on Wednesday nights. There are men like that in every church represented by the listeners on this podcast. The Lord's brought those type of people, and every single person's got a role to play in the body of Christ. And our job as pastors is to say, it's my job to shepherd these students, but it's also my job to shepherd the body of Christ as a whole. And so we can't just focus on the youth ministry. If we do that to the neglect of their parents or some of the adults that may be called by God to serve in that ministry, then it's our job to have those conversations, cast that vision, and create roles that support them growing in their walk with the Lord as they pour their life out for students. And so I think it goes back,
so good.
Right? Staying in the lobby, knowing those people, but even just asking yourself, okay, are the roles that I have in my ministry right now supporting the gifts that I have in my volunteers? And is there some things that I need to shift about the way I'm asking my leaders to lead so that they can be most effective in pouring out their spiritual gifts for these students? Because if dude's teaching, we don't need to ask him to teach. We just don't need to ask him to do that. Even though we need small group leaders, we got to be able to think differently to be able to maximize their potential in our ministries.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, it's what you're recruiting is almost more important than who you're recruiting, because what you're recruiting is going to determine who it is that's going to do it. But two, dude, one of the things that's just I've experienced working with you, but I hear you say all the time, and even in this podcast is okay, the best way to recruit is to know the strengths of people and then cast a vision of how they can not be a worker, but how they can make a difference, how, not what, here's what we need out of you, but here's what God is going to do through you if you say yes to this. And so little plug, and I'll actually link one of these, an example in the description that you can download and edit for free. Just a little giveaway is, man, job descriptions. Job descriptions go a long way. Get a 1-sheet page job description. And when you recruit somebody, and after you've had a shoulder tap conversation, hey, I see this in you. You go to a vision coffee, you set that down in front of them and say, hey, this is what I see in you. I think this is great. I think you would thrive in this role, but I think this role would actually thrive in you and put something in you. One of the things I love to put on our job descriptions is why it matters. So we have the 1-sentence job description, some expectations, some behaviors, but we just have a little section that says why it matters. And it just reminds people that it's more than holding doors. It's more than check-ins. It's more than hosting. It is making a significant kingdom impact because we put you in your sweet spot. So, man, that's so good. Such good stuff on recruiting. It's working for you, man. I honestly, my prayer is that whoever's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, man, that it works for you like it's working for Luke Harper and his team in Fayetteville, Arkansas, because it is rolling. Their dream team is the real deal. I got to come and preach one of your dream team trainings, which was awesome. And dude, it's incredible. The team they have is legit. So we'll link their Instagram in the show notes and his as well. But if you need some inspiration, if you need a church to model after, then C3, man, they're the ministry. They're the thing you need to be looking to. So, dude, thanks for giving some time. I know you're super busy, all that stuff, but we appreciate you. Appreciate the knowledge, and yeah, dude, you're a legend. So, thanks for being on the podcast, bro.
No, man, love you. Happy to do it. Anytime I get to talk with Patrick Weichel is a privilege, my man. So, hope it's helpful to people. But I'm just glad we got to talk, honestly.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, thanks for joining us for another episode. We do hope that you found simple strategies that will help lead you to scalable growth in your ministry, specifically when it comes to recruiting. Look for those resources in the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode of the Simply Strategic Ministry Podcast.